I'm lucky I didn't scrape the bowels of the earth with my bottom, because many do, honestly. Like, people either end up dead or having lost everything, and death is actually the one thing that I think a lot of people in AA identify with, where they're like, that's the destination we're all pursuing. It's just a matter of how we get there at this point, which I think for the average casual observer would be like, what? Like, but it is. It's like just what you become easily identifiable with, which is like, okay, well, I'm no different than anybody else in this room. Some people just got further there, and that's like where the magic happens.
Trident Coffee is sponsoring this episode of the Invictus Mindset Podcast. My guys over at Trident taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good and bad, and everything in between. At Trident, they're storytellers. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. They help create connections through symbology and storytelling that engage their customers on an emotional level, and this distinguishes them from other coffee brands. You can find Trident in Imperial Beach and in Coronado. They offer over 14 plus nitro cold brews along with dairy-free options. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from their keto bakery. All these options will allow you to support your health and fitness journey with Trident Coffee. They're more than just a coffee company. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Once again, that's tridentcoffee.com. Use code Invictus20 for 20% off online and in tap rooms. Take your coffee experience to the next level. Two important factors for us over at Invictus Mindset are true care and attention to detail. My friends over at RX Smart Gear have been bringing innovative fitness tools to the market since 2009. From their award-winning Evo speed ropes to their amazing gymnastics grips to their line of inflatable fitness equipment, they're constantly looking to problem solve within the fitness industry. They're always allowing us to have our gear work for us rather than against us. Hop on over to RX Smart Gear and use discount code Invictus Mindset to shop their latest cutting edge gear. Have your gear work with you and not against you. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Invictus Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is former president of Loud and Live Sports and the new CEO of HWPO Training, the Chief, Mat O'Keefe. Welcome to the show, man.
Oh, Bryce, thanks for having me, man. I like the sounds of that. I might take you on the road with me. You can be my hype man. That was great.
Don't threaten me with a good time, man. Do not threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it. Thank you. It's good to be with you. It's been a bit. Pumped to catch up.
Yeah, it's been a bit. And, things, as we were talking a little bit offline, things have been shaking a little bit in the CrossFit space.
They have. Yeah, it's we were trying to get prepared to go live here. We're talking about sort of what was when we last talked. I was at Pat Velner's wedding. I think, did the podcast from his office. And it was like sort of peaceful at that point, I guess. Things had started to look like they were going to settle down. Fast forward to today, it's been a big, 5 or 6 months since we last talked.
Yeah, for sure. And Velner's now a father and recently won Wodapalooza.
He did. So he was a dad at the time, the little guy, but yeah, he did. He won Waza, my last as the man in charge over there, which was, great. He won all 3 of the Wazas that I was at. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Power to the redheads, right?
It was a ginger movement. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so funny.
He's awesome, by the way. Like that. Have you had him on here?
Yeah, I've chatted with him before. I got to get him on again. I got to catch up with him since he had the baby and he's been, doing his thing.
He's so cool. Yeah. He's just, we're all good friends. Myself, him, Matt, Sammy, Michelle, his wife. Yeah, he's super cool.
That's great, man. You seem to rub elbows with just about everybody in the CrossFit space. It seems like every episode that I'm fortunate to connect with people, your name comes up. A couple weeks ago, I was able to hang out with Cooper Marsh.
Oh,
And he
cool.
kind of talked about you a ton
Oh, that's
and
nice.
his crew over at Lab Management. And his episode actually went live today.
I'll have to check it out. He's good people. I've been spending a bit of time with him lately on the road. He does some work with Scott Stallings, and Scott's a really good friend of mine. I'll jump in and help him out a little bit, caddy on Mondays, I like Coop. I got a lot of history with Coop. Sammy grew up essentially with Coop in CrossFit, so they were members at the same gym in Providence, just outside of Providence. So she knew.
And that's Mat Fraser's wife, right?
Yeah. Yep. Fiance, but but pretty much wife. They haven't officially tied the knot yet, but they're.
She just launched that cookbook too, right?
She did, yeah. It crushed it. Like literally, immediate response from the publisher was, "Let's start the second one." So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, really cool. Sammy's a grinder. She worked. Sammy, I met obviously Sammy through Matt, but was aware of her because she worked at Reebok way back, and that's how they sort of met. And then they started dating, and then she worked with me on the athlete management business. So she was with me doing that for, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years. And then, the evolution was, she wanted to start her own business, create content around the cooking stuff, and then eventually write a book. And she wrote that book, took every photo. Like most of the time, people have a lot of help in those scenarios. I don't want to, burst anybody's bubble, but most of the books you read are not necessarily all ground out by the person that is the author. Which doesn't mean much of anything. I mean, it is their mindset and approach that's put in those things. But Sammy literally bled that book out, and it's cool that it's paying off for her. She's awesome, and she's now a big part of HWPO training. She runs our media and content. So she's by my side every day with this thing, and everything you see coming out on our channels is, her orchestrating it from behind the scenes.
Wow, man. You do such a good job empowering the people around you. But I think myself and everybody else listening out there or watching on YouTube is curious, like, what does a day in the life look like with the HWPO crew? It seems like you guys are always doing something with regards to like training, golfing, hanging out with brands, like trying to figure out next moves with HWPO, obviously coming out with content. Matt just launched a book, Mat Fraser, and then Sammy just launched her cookbook. It seems like you guys are always doing something. And when I chat with the Buttery Bros, like they let me know that they're in the loop connected with you as well, doing things with Podium and a few other brands. And it's just like, it feels like you guys are doing so much all the time, but you're still just a guy.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's really cool. I love hearing that from somebody that's kind of watching us from the outside. But we're just, I always say this, it's like good things with good people for the right reasons. So it's just so, we try to, that crew you just named is just it's our crew, right? Like the Buttery Bros are coming out for quarterfinals to hang out. Like, anytime, we can get together with those guys. We were just in Columbus with them. It's awesome. And we, always have fun and it comes across really, really cool through, any media they put out or we do. Yeah, we all train every day, obviously. We've been very focused lately on this move we made with HWPO, leaving hybrid to our own platform. So we built an app with our partners at Fitter Training. So it's an HWPO training app. And that was an incredible process and a big process. Anybody who's built anything like that knows that there's a lot involved. And we launched that last week. So we've got a lot going on, honestly. Like, we're trying to focus. Matt's focusing a lot of energy on Mallory and Jason and Jake, who, Jake's our sort of head coach, helps with Matt with all the programming, but also just finished 39th in the world in the Open. So he's legit, and he's trying to get to the games for the first time. Mallory and Jason, working on getting back and doing their best there. And I mean, honestly, we're just all rolling our sleeves up and doing whatever we can right now to, get I don't know what the best, the train, continuing the train moving, out of the station to the next station to the next, we're having a blast doing it. We've been doing a lot of travel lately. We've been, Matt's been all over the place. I have, I think we're all looking for like a little more time at home when we get through this launch and, start to tell some stories about, Mallory and Jason and, what we're doing. We got some launch stuff coming up with HWPO on products. Like we're going to bring experts on for strength, for swimming, for things like that, we've got to really sit at home and spend some time telling the story around that. So yeah, I don't remember what you asked, but like we're all over the place. Yes, that's a good observation, but it's kind of like, I mean, it's controlled chaos, which is exactly what I think our entire careers have been in a lot of ways, which is like, as much as we can recognize if you're bending so you don't break, and do really cool stuff with cool people. If somebody like, the Vitary Bros calls and they're like, hey, let's go skiing in Utah. You guys should come out and train for a week. We do it, because it's like, shit, there's a gym there. We can do some skiing and hang out and we can be around them and nothing bad comes of us ever being around guys like that. So we're going to do some more of it. We got some cool stuff coming up and we love grinding and being out and about.
Totally, man. The way I'm envisioning it is we've got this umbrella and you kind of oversee everything underneath the umbrella. And right behind you is kind of, or maybe in front of you, doesn't really matter, maybe beside you, is Mat Fraser kind of throwing out ideas, innovations, things that he kind of sees. And then underneath the umbrella is like all these different facets within what you guys are kind of involved in, similar to what you just described. And what's so fascinating to me is, it's really easy. Everybody's sitting on the couch with an idea. But you guys find a way to like truly execute that. What does the process of events look like? Because obviously all these things take funding. Are you guys negotiating loans with venture capital groups? Are you figuring out how to, hey, we need to do this first so we can generate some revenue so then we can do that? How do you strategically look at the process of building out a brand so that all these people underneath the umbrella can continue to innovate, feel valued and appreciated, but know that it's going somewhere? Because at the end of the day, it's still a business. There needs to be, money in, money out.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. We're self-funding all of this, to answer your question directly. And I think kind of how we look at our process is with that in mind is, it's funny, like we don't, funding is a really good way, like, because I think, we got asked this question on a live the other day, which is like, the more success we have, the better it's going to be for your experience with us. And I think we've proven that our entire career. And that's what, from HWPO's perspective, it's like, hey, come with us, teach us what you think looks better. We'll get better and then we'll build on it. We'll reinvest in you. Like the long play here is where we're at, and I think that softens sort of any stress around, I guess, the like monies in the grand scheme of things. Like we do the next right thing for the brand and, for our product. This isn't this like rat race for us to be, $100 million business. I think that result just takes care of itself when we're hyper focused on our brand and our product. That's what we spend all our time on, right? So, we've had a lot of people ask us if we, need or want money. It's something that's just not a priority for us today. Like I really want to look at every customer and make sure that they feel like they're getting an incredible amount of value for what they're paying us for. Get our group, our core group that's now established as our team. We've got 10 employees that have started this new journey with us to, be the next generation of leaders for, around our business and teach them the things that they need to, build the tools they need for us to be long-term successful and worry about some of that other stuff later, I think that's, I don't know what the original question was, but like from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think, if I was like giving advice or thinking like how we think and process, which, we do have so many different things going on. I think, we've gotten ourselves to a point through all this hard work we've put in over years to, get these really cool opportunities. But we approach them all the same, which is just how I describe, which is just, one foot in front of the other, being really true to brand and product. And just, people is literally everything. Like, being around the right people, involved with the right people is the hell yes in all these scenarios. So whether we're bringing them internal with us to help us grow, or we're investing in or partnering with external, the real vetting process for us is like, the eyeball test, just like really engaging people and making sure the right people are around all those other things. Yeah, I mean, you got to check product and brand, but then the people make the most sense.
Yeah. That's so fascinating that you say that. I mean, they always talk about you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's a very common thing talked about. And, you mentioned 10 employees now working with you guys over there at HWPO. What does that process kind of look like as you guys are potentially looking on to bring on new people? Is it based on reputation? Is there an experience process? Do you kind of observe? Like, I'm a huge believer that how you do anything is how you do everything. And, is it like you go train? I know you're the 100 burpee guy and sneaking that in. Or you're like, hey, let me see how this person responds to stress. Like, how do you guys decide that vetting process to decide who's allowed on the inner circle?
Yeah, I think, it is about the complete package. It's not necessarily, I mean, I think there's a lot of technical expertise out there. It's again, we're just looking to build a group of people that will do anything to get to our goal. Where it's like, if you're an engineer on the product side programming and, hey, we need some help on customer service, the willingness to just jump. I mean, that's a remedial example, but just to jump in, like, we want people that are like, putting their hand up, running to help. Not like, hey, this is what I do. That's not what I do. So just team oriented, yeah, we want people that like to, to do what we do, get their hands dirty and, have goals, work hard for them. They like to, part of our culture is in the gym, like they grind on a daily basis, even, I'm, whether, when I'm working 16-hour days, 17-hour days, I'm like, finding a time in my living room with, my C2 bike, doing like, some sort of quick workout for 10 minutes. It's like those, yeah, it's, people who really embrace and embody our mindset, it's the show up, work hard, make yourself proud, that mentality, that group, the people that really can embrace that is the people that we want to have a part of our team.
Totally, man. Well, I appreciate you kind of going down that rabbit hole and kind of sharing how some of the operations work for you guys. I'd like to pivot a little bit. Last time we spoke, we had just gotten through the Black Lives Matter movement. We had the Greg Glassman tweet that went viral that, shook quite a bit of the leadership within the CrossFit organization. We saw Eric Rosa, by CrossFit, and it seemed like the dust was starting to settle a little bit. We had a little bit of a landscape with regards to how the season was going to look. We were going to have the Open and then quarterfinals, semifinals, and the games. And, Wodapalooza thrown in, the Dubai Fitness Championship, a few very cool events. And then all of a sudden things started to change a little bit. Eric Rosa went public with some mental health challenges. There's a lot going on in the world. I'm sure he's got some business things going on too. We later saw you take a little leap, and we can kind of get into your story a little bit, moving from the president of Loud and Live Sports over to the CEO of HWPO, as we mentioned previously. And then lastly, the big one that, really shook things up was Dave Castro being fired from CrossFit, which the delivery of that information was very unique, that I think rose some eyebrows for sure. I think at that time, you hadn't made your move yet. And I think a lot of people were like, hey, is Matt O'Keefe moving over to work for CrossFit. Like, what's that going to look like? And, I just threw a lot at you, but I did want to kind of throw the landscape for our listeners who maybe did not follow the sequence of the shaken within the space.
Yeah, that was an interesting, what really kind of played out in a few weeks, honestly, if people look back, or a month or so. But yeah, it's, I think the humbling piece on my side was the response to, sort of my exit. And I had, it's funny. I didn't really like intentionally put this like space between what I was leaving and what I was doing to create anything more than I wanted to properly recognize I was very grateful for what I did. And I wanted to be very proud and wave the flag properly for what I was going to do, and then like right in the middle of that, literally I was going to announce on a Thursday that I was going to work at HWPO, and Eric announced that he was stepping down, and I was like, oh Jesus, and so I didn't announce it that day. It's funny, like there was people who had interviewed on me and they had it under embargo, and they're like, hey dude, we're not going to run this today because of this. And I was getting a lot of attention to be going over there, which was humbling. It's funny, Matt was like, hey, are you still coming? Like, I'm seeing a lot of your name with CEO of CrossFit. I was like, oh, well, that's humbling. I'm not. No, I'm definitely coming to HWPO. Yeah, the Dave stuff landed right before Waza. So it was a unique time to be down there. And, it was probably really good for them at that time that, because a lot of leadership came in. Gary Gaines was in, Eric was supposed to, couldn't make it for some family reasons. But Austin and a bunch of the affiliate leadership team were in town, and they were able to sort of have a lot of conversations around it. I think some stress that created. I think that what we consistently see Dave or, and you'll see it with Waza, with me leaving, and I'm really proud of my work there, but like, I always say this, respectfully, like we're not that important, life goes on, so one of those things where it's like everybody's replaceable. And that's not to disrespect Dave and his work or Eric and his, and, what I've done with Loud and Live. It's truly, if you do really a good enough job at what you do, you leave it in the right place for people to pick it up and then move it forward. Right. And we have an insanely resilient community in sort of platform space, vertical, whatever people want to call it, in sport. Been through a lot, and this thing is like battle tested at this point. A lot of people would argue like, okay, enough's enough. Like, when is it going to get weathered and crumble? But, maybe some of these pieces are the necessary pieces for us to be the most successful moving forward. I don't know. Like, I don't run their business. I've had good and, great and ugly interaction with all of that, and I've, today, I think, with my most recent experience, I think it's going in the right direction. I was at the Columbus Open announcement, and I feel a good vibe, so I would say like, I don't know, Dave particularly, I think a lot of people were like, oh, Jesus, like, here we go. And, and I would say this about myself, because I know if like Dave hears this, it'd be like, that's a direct shot at me. It's not. It's like, we're not that, he's done a great job. Don't get me wrong. The games is insane, but he, like anyone, is replaceable. And I think we're seeing that because like the Open grew and people are still excited about doing our sport and participating. We'll see what the games looks like. Maybe that's going to be harder without him. But, I'm optimistic that we have a really cool sport that people like to watch and really good stories around athletes, that we can tell more of now. Like that's more of the focus. And it has been even in the most recent. So yeah, it's been chaotic with all that stuff. And Eric's departure, I hope he's great. Like I think we should all be really grateful that Eric arrived at a time that we needed him, or somebody most, right? Like he got this thing, sort of out of the shitter and out of this like really, chaotic time and put it back on a path towards success. Think, no matter what people are thinking and looking at with Eric, you better have some gratitude for that guy, because it could have looked a lot differerly if he wasn't willing to put a lot of resources toward this, right? So, like, I think we're in a far better place because of Eric Rosa today than we were a couple of years ago. I mean, that's not even, like, that's objective. That's not even a subjective thing. And my stuff, like, I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. And I had really processed that for a long time. You know, a lot of it was family, and then a lot of it was opportunity that, you know, I was presented by Matt, and it wasn't anything to do with like, I always try to make decisions on making them about, you know, the thing I'm making them on, not against the thing I might be not continuing with, right? Like I don't want to overcomplexify that, but it's like, it's not about leaving Loud and Live. You know, that's a casualty or like thing that I have to make a hard decision to exit. But like, this was really about what was right for me, my family, Matt, you know, I think, you know, what would be really right for a lot of people around me too, which is like, you know, me being a part of this moving forward. It was like a total hell yes. When Matt presented it to me, it was like, shit, this is like what I've been working towards.
No, the way you take a zoomed out approach.
That was a massive dump for you. So.
No, I mean, I did the same to you, man.
Yeah.
So it only made sense for you to do it back.
Yeah.
But I just think you do a really good job taking a zoomed out approach to kind of just observe all of these big scenarios and situations with a very, you know, zoomed out lens so you can see the whole picture versus just being too deep in the weeds where it can start to get a little bit judgmental. Going back to Eric Rosa, I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding too, where people categorized it as him like, oh, I can't handle this, I'm no longer going to be the CEO. But in reality, he kind of just moved himself out of the face of CEO position and is now, you know, the leading member on the board, which actually has precedent to fire the CEO if necessary, from my understanding. And I'm not saying he's going to do that, but I'm just saying it puts a little bit more power in his hands. He can still lead and make really solid decisions and, you know, construct board meetings and do different things that, you know, help lead the CrossFit organization in the right direction. But he no longer has to be the face. And I think that sounds like he wanted to be the face originally to get things out of the shitter, as you mentioned. But then he was like, all right, like, this is kind of where I like to be, is backed up a little bit. I don't necessarily need to be in the limelight. Can you help describe that from a business operations standpoint and what that means for the organization for people that didn't quite understand what that looked like?
Yeah, I'm glad you're addressing it because I think everybody needs to take a collective deep breath with that whole thing. And I think like we see it's this space of extreme ownership. Everybody loves it so much that they just like own it and they get all, you know, it creates all this reaction. But, you know, first of all, that like he didn't say he was leaving today. There was a process to which he had to leave because they need to search for a new CEO. He's got an incredible amount of money invested in the business, and there's other, large investment funds and firms that are involved in this. Like, not a whole lot is changing. I think only for the better. Like and I know Eric personally and have been involved in his transition in. He never intended on doing this long haul, so he wanted to be a stabilizing force, and then, you know, figure out what the evolution looked like. I think it's a little quicker than he maybe thought of, but it's honestly, it's like, and this is like, and Eric will probably smile if he heard this too. It's just like, who cares? Like, and he believes this too, like I do, is like, who cares? Like, well, you know, as long as like we're building, you know, all the right things around these things and like we're making changes that people have asked for, and, you know, the word evolution is a part of what we're doing. Like, he's putting really good people in place. And, you know, I mentioned Gary Gaines. Gary Gaines is awesome. Gary's a really cool opportunity for CrossFit. You know, he's leadership of the future and brings a lot of outside expertise from things, you know, from other businesses he's been involved in. Impressive dude.
For people that don't know Gary Gaines, who is that?
Gary, yeah. So Gary's a young entrepreneur that, you know, he's been on the board of, you know, many different, he worked with Tesla. He's worked with fitness platforms. I'm not sure exactly if I remember correctly which one, if it's Peloton or, you know, Barry's, or like, he's been involved in a lot of fitness stuff. He's had a ton of success in the business world. And he's worked with Eric in the past, and, you know, they had a relationship, and he came over to, you know, head up the affiliate business, essentially. That's probably a very terrible way to describe what he's doing internally, because I'm sure it's, training related and there's a lot more to it. But, really their core business is what Gary is focused on. And he's an incredibly charismatic leader. And he's very compassionate about, being sensitive to historical stuff that, he had nothing to be, he wasn't around for, but also really helping this whole thing evolve so that it's got sustainability. I'm a big fan of his. I've spent quite a bit of time around him and want to spend some more. He was at Waza. We spent some time in Columbus, so I think that's a guy that I would look at and be like, okay, we're okay. Like there's people like that in all these different spots. And Justin's running the sport. Like Justin's been around a long time. And
I feel like Justin Berg's been around since the very beginning. He's just been involved nonstop.
I mean, he's been heavily involved in the progress of the sport for years. He's got a big job to do, and he's got a lot of people that he's had a lot of conversations with that are willing to say, all right, like let's restart, and give you, the right support so that you can build your resume around this and process this the way you want to. I'm willing to do it. Athletes are, he's had a lot of great conversations since he got that job. So we'll see what that looks like. Just like he would say to, about me, like, hey, we'll see what HWPO looks like in a year after you've had the chance to run it, right? That's not me. I'm rooting for him and I'm supporting him. So that's hyper clear, but we'll see what that looks like in a year. We all got a lot of work to do. He believes it, and he's got a lot of passion and vision for the sport. But the Eric stuff, like, I think everybody, I don't know. I mean, it's like one of those things is like half the time I don't even know if like some of the concern and noise in our space is like really a big group, because, social can be confusing at times, so you should sort of look at that stuff and you wonder. But, I think we're in a good place, and I hope Eric is, I do keep in touch with him. Like he seems good, spending some time with his family. He's still working, by the way, just so that's clear. Like it's not taking place until they find another CEO, from my understanding. So that's not a, when that got announced, I think that was like, we're going to over communicate because we didn't communicate maybe properly on the Dave thing from, like you want to hear things as they're being processed. They literally could have just waited and hired a new CEO and announced a new CEO like 9 months from now and just been like, Eric's moving to this job, but they over communicated. That's kind of what it was,
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good observation. I also want to note to our listeners, just the immediate value that I've seen, especially during the open, it wasn't just, an open announcement, an open workout, but I did think it was cool that they sent like the affiliate layout. I thought it was cool that they gave like a generalized class plan. I think CrossFit Training did a really good job kind of giving feedback as to like, hey, if your goal is to move really well and optimize health and wellness, here is a way to do the box jump step down. If your goal is to try to push yourself a little bit, but you don't quite have that level of skill or tremendous impact on the body, here's an avenue. And then they gave a third tier that was like, if you're trying to make the CrossFit Games and move on to the next level, here's another avenue. And I looked at that and I'm like, man, like the open's always a challenge for affiliates. And the fact that they're sharing tools to not only lay out the space, but also appropriately attack each movement so that members and athletes can stay safe and also optimize their performance for their individual goals. I was like, you know what? This feels good. This feels really supported. And that's just a shout out to, like you mentioned, Gary Gaines and Justin Berg and all those guys that like took that foundation that was laid by those before them, took the feedback from the community, made observations based on the issues they were seeing every year in the open. They're like, all right, let's implement some change. I thought that was really cool.
I couldn't agree more. The Open, for all of us, first of all, it's the largest sporting event in the world. It may be history.
Is it really?
Yeah. So I've heard that. It's funny. I heard that first tossed around at Nike. They mentioned that. So it's the largest participation event for in sport. So it's like pretty pretty badass. And I think you're all feeling it right now, as am I. It's just such a cool rallying point on our calendar every year. I mean, you love it and you hate it depending on sort of how you're approaching it. But it's like, man, when it came up this year, even as busy as I was like, I really had a great moment of clarity with it. And I think I do every year, but I was just like, man, this is awesome. I was in the gym that I love, that I really kind of, did a lot of my work in, as a CrossFitter, training, and at home. And it was Friday night, and like, there's moms and teenagers and people I've trained with for 10 years that I haven't seen in a while because I've been so busy, like still at it, and competing their ass off for another rep, and I did the handstand walk workout there, and it was like, people like, smashing their face trying to get another handstand walk. And it was like, this is what I remember CrossFit being, this is what I got most attracted to at the beginning. The open is awesome. Honestly, like if you don't like the open, I'm sorry. Like you just need to keep coming back. Honestly, Bryce, you remember, I mean, you've been at it a long time. Like the repeats back in the day, like people were doing the workouts like 4 times, and it was like, it's evolved a little bit because the elite category, it's not really much of, anything. It's really cool to see them do these tests once though, and see where they really stand on a first try. But it's, man, the open's friggin' amazing, and it's good to see it back.
It's such a cool experience. It's a really, really cool experience. I was talking to some of our community, and, it's so fascinating because exactly what you said, it had a little bit more weight back in the day where you did need to repeat a little bit based on some of the scores you were seeing or, what you felt like you were capable of. And dude, it created so much anxiety, and just training just didn't really exist. It was just the open for those 5 weeks.
Dude, it was 5 weeks too.
It was 5 weeks back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of them was obviously that, they later implemented that 2-tier, one workout that had the lift. So that made it 6 total scores, which was like, oh man, like you could do awesome on that first part, but if you bomb the lift, it's like, well, now you got to redo the whole thing. And so, I think it's really cool to see how it's evolved. I think 3 weeks is perfect, especially for affiliates. I also think that how they changed the weight of the open, meaning like, it doesn't have as much weight for those competitive athletes to move into the next tier. And I think it's phenomenal because it allows for more inclusivity. A lot of like our comp class members will now have the opportunity to move on to quarterfinals, which is really, really cool. Versus before it was like the open and then you're done. And so I think that pairing system works a little bit better. But I was having a conversation with some people within our community, and, there's a group of us at Invictus that have decided like, hey, like our value systems have changed. We're going to lean into, family or business or podcast stuff. We all kind of have our realm. And so we still train at a high level, but we're not trying to make the CrossFit Games anymore. And all of a sudden it's like 10 minutes before we do an open workout, and we like look at each other like, why am I so nervous? And it's just this unique thing that like you love it because you're going to push yourself, but you hate it because you're like, I know what this is going to feel like. And there's a moment, I don't know if you felt this in every single open, or maybe I started off and I was like, oh, I'm just going to move well. I want to preserve like optimal movement and try to have good energy for what I'm going to do next after this workout. And then there's like this moment halfway through where I'm like, screw that. I feel like competing right now. I'm going to push myself. What's going to happen here? And like, even if my scores aren't highly competitive, it's competing against yourself in that moment to try to be a better version of you. And I think that's such a magical element that almost everybody in the CrossFit space experiences, even if it's not the whole workout. There's a moment where you're like, I think I can get one more rep.
Dude, that is so. I have talked a lot about this lately, because that's sort of that's what it's doing for me now, is like the mental value that this training brings to me today is far exceeding the physical value. And by the way, it meets the mark on the physical side. But every moment I do a workout, forget about the open alone, where I get to make a choice whether I do or don't do something because it hurts. When I do, I learn that I can do more than I thought I could, right? Like, so that part is like, that just like literally sums up the value of this thing. Because people look at it as like, outsiders that don't get it. And like, you're looking to like sort of, maybe come in and test it out and think of it like that part right there. Just do burpees. If you can't get your body to lie down and stand up again because you're in so much pain, like you'll understand immediately what I'm talking about, which is like, that's a choice because you can always lie down and stand up. So you're choosing not to at that point. And that hurdle that you learn in this gym, and you got people that help you through it, that are aligned with you on it, that community piece of it, where it's like, we do this together and we learn people to push themselves way past their boundaries physically. That's it. Like in the open is like the home of that, where it's like, you do something in the open and you're like, shit, I didn't know I could do that, and it's like, I've always surprised myself in the open. And I always feel exactly how you just described it. I did the other night, like I went to that Friday Night Lights the first night, but the gym owner was like, can you please come? And I'm like, man, I just like to do this in my garage and like, I'll video it, send it in. Like, I'm like, fine, I'll come in. And I walked in and I'm like, I feel it right now. I'm like, I'm like, this is amazing. Yep. But, I'm so pumped. Like, I had a lot of fun with it. Like, Sammy and I competed a bit through this. She kicked my ass, but, that's what it's all about. It's, it's so fun.
You're competing for pride. So that way your friends can't talk too much smack to you.
Well, Sammy's talking a lot of smack about it. She just basically like, she would text me. She'd be like, hey, what's your score? I just need to know what I need to get one more rep of, so, but we had a ton of fun. I love that, man. We had a ton of fun with it.
I also think it's really cool that it's also a teaching point, right? Like in a sport like CrossFit that's so measurable, it's like, hey, what's your time? How much weight did you lift? I think it's really good to have a teaching point for the newer athletes, involving themselves in, as you mentioned, the largest sporting event now in the world. That's really cool to throw that around. But the teaching is really like, hey, it's not just about the outcome. It's who you become in the process. Are you still moving well and not, cheating reps and not getting too far in the gray area? Are you trying to maximize your potential so that night when you look yourself in the mirror while brushing your teeth, you're proud of yourself. You're proud of what you did. I think it's a really cool conversation to have because sometimes people get so caught up of where am I on the leaderboard? What was my score? Oh, that person beat me, but I normally beat them in class. And it's this external comparison seeking validation, but I think it's cool to look internal and measure yourself by the effort.
100%. I think that, well, what you're describing is what made me so attracted. Like, first of all, I've been a part of like helping with, building what I'm involved in now. This isn't a commercial, by the way, that just like really resonates with me with HWPO because it really is that. It's like, we really build Matt, myself, Sammy, as a group, before we just sort of like launched something that had structure around it that others could consume, was about making yourself proud and working hard and like, really pointing yourself towards like you being your best, and what it meant to get to that point. Cause like, that's a really interesting theory of just like my best me, like your best you is like, involves a ton of shit from point A to point B, right? Like, and this, you've competed at a high level, you're grinding, on a business, and that takes not, the theory of it, but it takes the application of like, working your ass off every day, long days. If you're an entrepreneur, it's, 17, 16-hour days. It's like waking up in the middle of the night thinking about it. It's like not balanced, and that's that, that thing that I'm most attracted to in all of this, right? Like, I think but that mindset is what you're speaking about, and I think it's what I think, is what I'm most attracted to what I'm doing now is just like helping people, really make that incredibly basic, which is just like, if you think about, showing up, so do work, and, you're really proud of what you do, and you work your ass off, and put in the work, like that takes care of a lot of it. Like, I get it. Like, there's talent involved in these things and luck, but I'm telling you, if you outwork people and, you show up more than everybody else and you just like build consistency around those things, you are going to be insanely successful. You know that.
We just completed the 2022 CrossFit Games Open, and that final workout had increasingly challenging gymnastics, starting with regular pull-ups, followed by chest-to-bar pull-ups, and concluding with bar muscle-ups. If you didn't have the right grip, you were probably falling off the bar or potentially even tearing your hands. You probably need to try the Alex Smith 2.0 grips from RX Smart Gear. These cutting-edge grips were designed by CrossFit Games athlete and former gymnast Alex Smith to be the most comfortable grips you've ever worn. High-volume pull-ups or challenging gymnastics movements will feel like a breeze. Go to rxsmartgear.com and use discount code Invictus Mindset to order yourself a pair today. I promise you, your hands will thank you. Once again, that's rxsmartgear.com, discount code Invictus Mindset. One of my philosophies has always been is that if you want to create consistency, you've got to create convenience. I started taking athletic greens because I was tired of taking handfuls of pills and capsules each morning. One scoop in 8 ounces of water, quick little shake, and that's it. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D, along with 5 free travel packs. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Invictus. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/Invictus to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Enjoy this on your very first purchase and create an optimal, comprehensive nutrition program. I think showing up is such a important thing to talk about because this entrepreneurial grind, whatever you're in, and it doesn't have to be verbalized as a grind, and a hustle grind gets tossed around a lot these days, but it's more so just that slow drip of just keep going. It's not always sexy. It's not always peaks. There are valleys involved. But what I wanted to ask you about is when you look at this element of showing up, I kind of look at it as like, who are you showing up as? Because we're all humans. There's going to be days where maybe you're a little moody, maybe you didn't get as much sleep, maybe you had external responsibilities, or you're got a little tweak from the workout the day before, or a passive-aggressive email or text from a relationship that you're managing. It's interesting because, the goal is to try to show up with that energy, that youthful enthusiasm. We're all seeking that flow state. That's not always realistic as humans, but we can strive for it. What are your thoughts on this concept of who do you show up as?
Yeah, I think, everybody needs to ease their mind on perfection. I think it's really hard to just be everything you want to be all the time because you're human. And, it's like going back to that whole idea of being the best you. That what that is just, doing the next right thing all the time, which is, and I think we talked a little bit about this one in our prior conversation, which was, I think a lot of people get wrapped up in a moment decision, an action, and how they processed and executed that. And then the result of that then dictates the next, right? It's just one of these things where it's it creates either a celebratory or a visceral or concerned, or there's a million different sentiments you can put against the reaction you have to what you just did that then now dictates your entire future. And it's just, in the grand scheme of things, if you can really run the basis of just do the next right thing, no matter what. I learned this because I think I shared with you last time. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm 11 years sober now, and when I was getting sober, I couldn't think of much more than put one foot in front of the other and just don't make any big decisions. Just if you F something up, just do the next right thing. You're not going to fix that. And now I've really tried to apply that to this, where it's I'll think of it just from even my recent move with this, some things in HWPO on a daily basis don't necessarily look the way I want them to. And it's my job as a leader in this business to be well, why the hell does it look like that? No, let's just figure out how it looks moving forward. Right. So I think, that to me is, I think, the most simple approach about how you show up. From my perspective, bring everything you got all the time, and you're not always going to be great are perfect. You know, like you quite frankly might just have 50% of what you really want to have sometimes, but that's okay. Honestly, like, you know, quite frankly, I think, you know, lying in bed instead of doing it, you know, is the choice that I'd love, you know, you or myself or anybody else to make instead of, you know, lying in bed. That's, you know, the definition of showing up is actually showing up, right? But with what you have, you know, and then how you get better at showing up is, you know, learning that, you know, when stuff isn't perfect, thinking like, okay, well, that didn't go right. Let's just, you know, let's try to be great next, you know? I don't know, like maybe that sounds like super basic and people would be like, well, no shit.
I love it, man. What I'm hearing is, you know, do the best with what you got. And, you know, if you're really passionate and enthusiastic about what you're doing, typically that creates a little bit of momentum. Starting seems to be the hardest part. And if you just take those first couple steps, even though they might not be the best steps or you might be a little wobbly in those steps, it gives you the opportunity to try to autocorrect. And it's practice, right? I think they talk about that in the world of yoga. Like you're not always going to have the same flow or same mobility, but you're showing up to your mat and then you have the art of practice. And then along the way, you feel the energy and the frequency of those around you. And as we talked about before, if you're around good people, typically they'll kind of give you a little nudge in the right direction. And that's incredibly helpful. What are your thoughts on, you know, AA? I think I chatted with somebody recently around the storytelling component and playing the role of a sponsor and what you went through in overcoming alcoholism and how that is a transferable skill now in your ability to maintain a little bit of a narrow focus, not look too far ahead, and how you kind of operationally function in your day-to-day managing so much.
Yeah. So you're saying like, you know, how has AA played maybe a role in my success or like, yeah. I owe things to, you know, many different things, but, you know, absent that experience in my life, I'd be in a gutter, you know? And most people that have gone through that process, it's actually the most consistent thing that people would say about that, right? It saved my life, you know? Was I physically treading towards, you know, being, you know, dead at that point? No, but like, that's the progression. I think, you know, I can look back today and confidently say there would be no idea. You would not know who I am today if I hadn't found AA. You know, I would be doing very different things. Or if I even got the opportunity to try to start to do what I'm doing right now, I would have messed it up, you know? And that's why I think like, you know, my messaging is easy. Like, I just know how imperfect I am, you know, and I know it's okay to do that. And I've learned really through my, you know, and AA taught me that, you know, it was okay as long as like, you know, I didn't sort of resent, you know, things and, you know, I didn't carry those over and I was able to really say like the words, hey, I'm sorry, or like, you know, prove my value forward just with actions over intentions is this big thing there. Right. You know, it's like, because a lot of people in this world want to tuck their way into things. And I've just learned through that if I showed my family something, that they would believe that would be the way I would probably process things moving forward. Like I don't drink, or like then I actually start showing up for shit and I'm not, you know, distant. Well, I showed myself and them through those actions. Now that's transferred to everything in my life. It's like, okay, so I just like, if somebody thinks something and like, I'm not going to call them and be like, you know, you can't think that way. Or like, you know, I'm not that, or like you need to just look at this. It's like, you know what? You know, I put my head on the pillow really well at night because I do the right thing. And like, I will show, you know, if you don't feel that way, then let's get to, you know, my reaction to those situations with people would be like, you know, hey, let's get together and hang out, you know, or like, you know, let's get on a call and talk about things positive and forward. Because honestly, like you got to act life out. You can't, you know, talk it out. Meaning, you know, you can't talk people into shit. You know, like that's just not the way it works. AA has literally, and by the way, like people who are going through that, I see an immense amount of value around people kind of understanding the story and the thought process through that. Because I think you can relate it to other things in your life. Doesn't necessarily have to be like alcohol, It could be just a number of things that just take focus instead of what should be focused on. That's, sort of the definition of addiction, right? And like, I think it would just, some people would be like, oh, that's crazy. Like, why? Because I spend too much time, watching Netflix. Like, that's addiction. Well, it kind of is. Like, in the end, it's like you're focusing on something else than what you should. And it's not because maybe even you want to, it's just because you're addicted. It really is what it comes down to. It's just like there's physical and mental sides to that. I just think there's a lot of value in people reading through. I mean, there's a book called The Big Book. That thing, you can like take things out, take alcohol and put a million other things in, and it just teaches amazing lessons. It's like you go when you go through the whole process of sobriety and like going into AA, there's like shame involved in that. And then immediately you're like, I'm so glad I'm an alcoholic. And people who hear that will be like, are you out of your mind? I'm like, yeah, because I never had the capacity or platform to really understand the things I do now. And these people, and it's really all it is, just people teaching people and paying it forward taught me how to really think with how I'm wired. It's really it, and it's, man, I'd be nowhere without that.
I really honor that, man. I appreciate you sharing. I know that's not an easy conversation to have, and congratulations on being sober for 11 years. That's huge. And I also think it's a good reflection on how we're all just a bundle of stories. And through storytelling, we don't necessarily tell people what to do, but we share our experience. And then, as you mentioned, actions over intentions. You give people the opportunity to, pick from a wide variety of perspectives, and they get to prove their actions. And I think that's a really cool way to kind of look at life. As you were going through that journey, I'm sure there's a lot of people that listen to this that, are maybe going through a rough patch or haven't found rock bottom or don't have the catalyst to change. What was your kind of rock bottom, or how did you ultimately decide like, hey, I need to change for the better?
It's a great question. Yeah, it's helped me through my process with my move too, by the way. A lot of these things for me tie back to family. So it was, I don't even remember the exact year, but the important part about like sort of like learning to move forward is you sort of have to scrape the bottom. And that's like a thing. A lot of people in recovery will say like, if people haven't bottomed out, they haven't really learned enough to want and have the desire to stay sober, and like to really, because I don't like that. Staying sober is so easy because all I have to just think about is how it was and where I might be if I did that. I just know, and it's like, like that's it. Because your mind will always think of like, because you're physically attracted to that, like, or chemically attracted to that, mentally attracted to like just wanting to have a beer or whatever it is, if you've lived in that world. But it's like such a trap that's easily identified for me, where it's just like, that's like, whatever, I'm so over that. Like, it's not even hard anymore. Really what it was, well, first of all, I had a friend that was sober, who then became my sponsor, and guided me through it. And, I always looked at, when you're nodding, I always looked at him and was kind of like, do I want to be friends with him or not? Because he's not doing what I do and he used to. Like, what's going on over there? And then I would, like, one day, I don't know why, I was just kind of like, hey man, I'm tired. Like, how do you do what you do? Like, because I think I got something going on, and I'm probably about to get thrown out of my house because I'm never home. Like, I'm prioritizing like being out at night rather than with my family. And honestly, right place, right time, great friend, literally saved everything with me and for me, helped me through that. And I think it's just like a mental thing where you just realize, like, I had enough of like fighting with my wife about things that she should be fighting with me about, and me being defensive to protect myself to be able to do what I wanted to do, which was, not the right thing, drink and like be out and like just be focused on that. So the rock bottom for me, luckily, wasn't, brown bagging it, homeless, lost everything, which it is for many. I'm very fortunate that my bottom was, I'm about to lose a lot of things I really do like, but I'm just out of control of because I'm more interested in focusing on this, which is alcohol. And it's really just has its teeth in me right now. And I just had so many cool people around me that had been through it, and it just was eye opening immediately. Like the Diet Coke crowd was like, "Oh wait, you're sober. Like you're not, and they all helped me. And they pounced and they like literally just dragged me to meetings. I went to a meeting a day for 5 straight years,
Wow, that's a
every
lot.
single day, because it was like at a point in there, I was like, not fine, but just like, I was like, okay, I'm in the snowball's going where it needs to go. But it was just like, I feel so damn good every day I walk out of here. Like, I'm going to keep coming. It's not like that anymore for me now. Like it should be more. I got back into a little of it in COVID because there was a lot of Zoom stuff that popped up. But yeah, I'm lucky I didn't scrape the bowels of the earth with my bottom, because many do, honestly. Like people either end up dead or having lost everything, and death is actually the one thing that I think a lot of people in AA identify with, where they're like, that's the destination we're all pursuing. It's just a matter of how we get there at this point, which I think for the average casual observer would be like, what? Like, but it is. It's like just what you become easily identifiable with, which is like, okay, well, I'm no different than anybody else in this room. Some people just got further there, and that's like where the magic happens.
Yeah, the way you described that was very like thought provoking for sure. Because I think fear and pain are two things that ultimately get most people to change. And it's interesting the way
fear, doubt, insecurity. Like literally, that's what defines people in so many different ways. But fear, doubt, and insecurity. That's it. Like that.
For sure. What do they call that? FUD.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, man. How are you able now to, I feel like you're involved in so many uncomfortable conversations with regards to brands, and some of them are obviously really fun, but you obviously need to network and go to different events and whatnot. How do you kind of navigate those things when everybody's typically there drinking, and how do you kind of manage that? Is that challenging, or is it kind of just your default because you've done it for so long now?
Yeah, that's an evolution. It is uncomfortable at the beginning, but what that is your ego thinking that you think somebody cares that you're not drinking, nobody gives a shit, really. So, and it's also where like, anybody in this space knows it's this unique crowd of people that don't really, like, I don't even get it. Like people don't drink, it's like I got, all these clients that I've worked with for years, like, they don't have any attraction to going out. It's like, wow, you're a very focused 22-year-old female that, when I was 22, I was like, 5 nights a week running around at nightclubs and bars, different life than I realized. But yeah, no, you get more comfortable with that. I think, again, the simple answer is people that are uncomfortable with that, it should be more of an identifier you have a problem, because if you're uncomfortable with it, it's like, what? Like, think about that. It's like, why should it be hard to say to abstain from anything? Because like in the grand scheme of things, it's like, you just need to be able to breathe and eat something to, and drink some water to like sustain. Like that's super, I know that's like this like Zen perfection, like simplistic approach, but it's like, that's it. Right. So it's, why should it be hard for me to say like, to say no to a drink or things like that? That's the thing that you got to identify with most. If like you can't stop something, like then there's a bit of an issue there. That's a huge identifier.
I love your approach. Just keep it simple, stupid for most things. Like I think it's so great because that leads to sustainability. It's a low hanging fruit that allows you to be consistent in almost all things that you do. And I really appreciate you sharing, some of those stories. I think they'll be very relevant for what the world's kind of going through. There's still a lot of volatility going on in the world with politics and, COVID and all the various changes and rules and regulations that seem to be changing, and gas prices. That's a big topic of conversation over here too.
It's wild, there's a lot. Yeah, I think, well, if anything I say helps like one person, like this was monumentally worth my time. And that's, what I've been given, I have to give forward, especially specifically on the sobriety stuff. Like, I think if somebody hears what I'm saying and it's like triggering something to help them not kill themselves essentially by just continuing to tread that path to what we know is the inevitable, then that's a win for me. So I'm always happy to share. Like I've gotten incredibly comfortable with talking about that over time. I think a lot of people really weigh in on that, lean in on that anonymous side. Like I don't like what good am I doing if it's anonymous? Because like people saved my life, breaking their anonymity, right, to help me get sober. So for me, I have a platform now that, that I'm really proud of, that, and some people listen to me. Well, they should know that that's part of my story, because if they're in the middle of that, you can do shit that I'm doing and you're doing. Like, there's light here, and I want to be able to help people with that. And it's it's part of my story, really.
Mm-hmm. And it all gets summarized with do the next right thing. That's what everybody always says about you when I talk to them. I want to ask you real quick, man. I had a great conversation with Cooper about this, but we were kind of discussing like the professionalization of CrossFit athletes. And kind of up until this point, other than some of the heavy hitters like Mat Fraser, Tia Claire Toomey, Katrin, Brooke Wells, some of those athletes that have, direct correlation to brands, Justin Medeiros, obviously, most athletes are compensated for being influencers, not necessarily compensated for being athletes. But I think we're starting to see that change a little bit. We're starting to see sponsors jump in. We're starting to see, the winnings be a little bit higher at some of these competitions. What are your thoughts in chiming in around, the monetization and professionalization of the sport of CrossFit?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to be a part of it on different angles, from many different angles. Well, the event side, my real north on that for us as an organization at Loud and Live was how do we create, greater earning opportunities for athletes. For me, that's a perfect, way to operate if you're a business in this space. Because I think the trickle down from that is really what will help you be successful as an event organizer in business. And I think that's why we were successful with Wadapalooza or West Coast Classic or Granite Games, is because, we focused on, being athlete first and like really trying to give back to the people that I think drew a lot of attention to what we were doing. So you need to reward those things, greed, not be greedy with, sort of the growth. Because I had a lot of trust when I went into that, right? Like, so I think a lot of people realize that, like, when I went into those, that was my next evolution. I sort of could have armed people and been like, hey, Matt, do this work, do this for me, Tia this, Katrin, come here and like, just help me. Like, I've helped you, you help me. Instead, it was like, no, like, this is easy. Like, I'm just going to like make it a hell yeah for them and like pay them more money, like when they win, and give back. And I know how to grow this business and, get people to partner. It creates an awesome ecosystem. So that part, like, I've really been proud of being a part of that. And, honestly, the eyeballs are the key to that. Like, we need to continue to create like really interesting storylines and, make it attractive for people to watch and attend, because in the end, you can't raise the bar on prize money if people aren't investing in it, like consumers and brands, right? So all that stuff needs to tie back to more people wanting to watch it and do it, right? That's where the open ties into this thing and makes it great too. It's just like, where there's hundreds of thousands of people competing, that's a cool segment of people that are probably buying a lot of products and showing up for Wadapalooza to either compete or attend. That thing keeps growing every year. It's awesome, So, that part's been really cool. We still got a lot of work to do. We want the athletes to, not cost athletes money to participate, right? Like, I think in the grand scheme of things, like getting more depth in the field of people that can really train on a daily basis to be great. Because, yeah, like guys like Matt and Tia and Katrin and all these people you described, Brooke and Justin, they have success and they can reinvest in their success, which is what they do because they're super smart. And just like, how do I, gain more resources to get better? And does that separate them more? Probably. I mean, they work harder than anybody in the world too. So, there's a, but what role does those 1% and 2% play in the overall, success and, the longevity of their career? It's hard to quantify that exactly, but it's a differentiator.
Mm-hmm.
But there's more depth too now today, which is I'm incredibly proud of. People getting paid because people are really getting attached to the storyline. It's marketable. There's more brands coming in from the outside. There's billions of dollars flowing through this market. So, we just started working with a girl, Ellie Turner. Daniel has been working with her really closely, the guy that works with me on the athlete management stuff. And, it's really cool to see Ellie realize, the ability to train full time through some stuff that brands are willing to do with her. And, I know who Ellie is, and she competed at WASA. She had a really good start to that weekend. She has a really bright future from what everybody can see, but I don't think not everybody knows who Ellie is. But people like Ellie are getting paid now and looked at people are trying to invest in the future and, look at people like her and be like, okay, who is going to be the face of the sport forward? It's really fun right now, honestly, dude. I'm so proud of it. I'm proud of guys like Coop that have made their life and career of it and fought really hard for athletes, advocated in tough times. Together we did as groups, and then individually we do now for those that are our clients. But honestly, it's that's like really one of the more rewarding things I've ever experienced in my life is just seeing people realize dreams, be able to do things more the way they want to do them, that help them then accomplish more goals, financially, particularly. The business side, where it was in 13 to where it is today, is insane. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely evolved a ton. And just the involvement from really good brands that are positively impacting. They're not just throwing products around. They're actually like really cool products. And one of the amazing brands that you've helped grow, I think it's one of the largest growing companies, is Noble. And we're seeing what they're doing, man. I think they're the title sponsor now for PGA golf training. And they're involved with swim. They're involved with so many different things. Can you touch a little bit on your involvement with Noble and then some of the cool things that you guys are doing? They're not just in CrossFit. They are expanding outside of the box, and it is really freaking cool to see.
Yeah, it's so fun and rewarding. Those guys are really good friends first. I met Marcus, Todd, Michael early on. Before I think Noble was even a dream. Marcus was a member at CrossFit New England. Those guys are from Reebok originally, broke off and had this dream and this idea, Noble. I had their first athlete, Brooke Entz. We worked very closely together, and those guys, I'm so proud of their success, but what they built, they've worked so hard and they've been so, remember what we were talking about on the front end, like hyper focusing on brand, your own brand and your messaging. They're the best at it. They have defined that. They've never sat in a meeting and said, what's XYZ company doing? We've got to react. They've always said, what are we going to do? What is Noble going to do? And today it's it's going to be one of the great American, sport business stories in history when this is done. That's pretty heady stuff. It's true though. That's not me just being a flag bearing, waving Noble guy. They just announced a partnership with PGA Tour as the official training shoe and apparel brand of the PGA Tour. That is insane. With guys that were slinging shoes out of their garage 5 years ago. So you can't just go to the PGA Tour and say, hey, I want to be the sponsor of the training and shoe and apparel. First of all, they've never done a shoe and apparel deal ever. So this is their first. And so training being the unique approach. And I've had a lot of history with the tour because I'm a golfer, and they have an active platform, which now Noble owns. It's the presenting partner of PGA Tour Active, which I think we're going to help them evolve. And, I've tried to help the tour with that over the last few years and made a lot of friends internal. So it's a really proud moment, where I have a couple worlds colliding, golf and fitness. And golf and fitness have a lot of potential forward. There's, it's a really cool crowd. The communities are very similar, and people are looking to get better at this insane. They have the people who golf have this insane dedication to better. It's people wanting to lower their handicap. It's a really cool crowd. It's very similar to the CrossFit crowd, and so I'm really interested to see what that looks like. And excited Noble is going to be a big part of that, and myself too for the next 5 years with that. My role with them is advisor. consultant on league partnerships. I've helped them with, the stuff with CrossFit, and I've helped them with PGA and Will Forward. So it's just, I pinch myself that I get to be a part of stuff like that and help with that. And this move for me was like, I get more focused on some things like Mat, HWPO, Noble, my relationship there, and continuing to support athletes, whereas like, the event business was like chaos. So I was like all over the place.
There's a lot going on all the time, for sure.
I love what I did there, but, this is really fun. But yeah, Noble is, they're building a headquarters in Boston. They have golf specific products too. So they're really emerging in other sports, a lot of other sports. I think people are like, oh, a small CrossFit brand. And I think for a long time they thrived on that, where they were just kind of like, we're not as small as you think we are. They're not as small as you think they are. Like, not you, but in general, right? Like they are a powerhouse and player in sport. And, they have NFL players. Like, there's 300 NFL players that have requested their product. Like, they have nothing to do with, like, they have a official partnership with Mac Jones, the quarterback of the New England Patriots, and a couple other players, but they've like embedded themselves in the NFL. Like, the NFL players love to train in their stuff, and like they've built that trust with people off the field. And it's the story with golf that they're telling really well. And I think a lot of brands will take recognition of this, but it's just, they want to talk about how Scott Stallings, works his ass off in the gym to be best on the field or whatever he does. They're your brand for that. Like, it's the magic with them. And, it's what people, I've just seen it all around me. My wife wears it all the time. She identifies with it. It's like her brand of choice. She grinds in it, and it makes her a better mom and a better employee. Like, they've crushed it with that messaging. And, I'm excited for them, honestly. Like, I'm really humbled.
I am too, man. Some of the things they've done are just very cool. I mean, their product is very sleek. It's attractive. I think Caleb Dressel did okay at the Olympics.
He's an awesome kid. Yeah, it's cool to spend some time with guys like him. I was at the PGA champion. I was at the Players Championship with them because it was sort of the launch of the partnership, and we got to hang out with Mac. We activated around Mac at the event. Did a workout with him. Just like, that's the people they have involved are like just all really good people. Like, Caleb is an awesome kid. Mac is stud, like super nice guy, just very grateful, and, just lives the Noble lifestyle. Like, they're like, Scott's the same. I've spent a lot of time with Scott lately. Like, I've been out roaming around with him a little bit on tour, but they got a cool crew. That's
rad, man. Don't hurt your back caddying for all these guys, man. Make sure they caddy for you too.
Yeah. That's been so much fun. If you were to say what's your favorite sport, I would say golf, right? So, like, I've grown up watching, that's what I've geeked out on. I'm a huge sports fan, but, so to be able to be out there a little bit and, be inside the ropes, sitting on I went to the Phoenix Open, was my first time I carried for him. And I've been to that as a fan before, but like, I'm on the range, and like the people that are like, he knows Scott because we're like super tight, and he knows, that I'm an incredible golf fan. And like, we're hitting next to, Stuart Sink, he's won the British Open, and Ricky Fowler, and, all these guys. And he's just laughing at me because I'm not like a fan guy. Like, I would never like cross a line probably, but I'm just kind of like, it's my first moment. Like, he's over there chipping, and it's like Phil Mickelson and all these guys. And it's like, it's kind of cool for me. Like, I've studied all these guys, and they've all had like micro pieces of what they do that have really defined, how I am as a businessman, or, and I've pursued some golf stuff. So it's just kind of cool to be out there. I geek out on that.
That's really cool, man. I'm so stoked you get to experience that. Do you think you could fix Charles Barkley's swing?
I think somebody did, by the way. He's because he played in one of those matches recently with the Capital One things that they've been doing, and the hitch is gone. So,
wow. Shout out to you, Charles. I'm sure that took a lot of time, energy, and effort.
That's tough to watch.
Amazing basketball player. I love listening to him with the TNT crew, but man, that swing was hard to watch for a few years.
By the way, and I got to give a shout out because I think you had a partner of yours, Trident Coffee.
Yeah, Trident Coffee.
Yeah, they sent me those cans. They are amazing. I didn't have one today because I went through them all. So I've been drinking them every day. I should have saved
that's
one.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for sending that out.
They're really great, man. They're a super awesome company that's out here. I'd love to link you with them. They're doing some really cool things with brands.
Cool.
And they're linked with a few NFL guys too. But more importantly, man, as you mentioned, do the right thing. Do the next right thing. And Eric Johnson, their owner and CEO, does an amazing job of storytelling, and it's a great product, man. Like they do some really cool things with the military.
SEAL? Is he a retired SEAL?
Not SEAL, but he is a retired Navy veteran. You can check out his story at tridentcoffee.com. Their ethos is really cool, and how he really wanted to bridge the gap between where he was in Afghanistan and with kind of what the Americans were doing over there. And I think you would really align with the storytelling component of what he's doing. And obviously their coffee's great, man. Nice little jolt to start the day.
It was awesome. It tastes great. Not many people can do canned nitro very well. They did it.
Yeah, it's very, very hard. Magical people, man. Last question for you, buddy. When you're looking at the development of sport, we've talked a little bit about the PGA Tour. I think CrossFit has kind of aligned with maybe the X Games, maybe the World Surf League, and maybe the PGA Tour or the tennis tour. Do you think that CrossFit could kind of get aligned with some of those sports that are a little bit more recognized in the broad and inclusive world?
Yeah, I mean, kind of put my, if I was going to be the visionary for it forward, how might I approach it? There's sport and then there's sort of like the methodology, but I think the tie back, to get where I think you're talking about would be for, them really to inspire the next generation to train this way for sport too. Right. And it's something that I'm really intent on with Matt, being a beacon with, we think that, this methodology is a really good solution, whether it's life or for sport. And we're planning on really attacking with, finding expertise in football or whatever it might be to just help speak to people like that better. But I think that that's really like a really good opportunity for us in general on the sports side. The more, integrated we are in other sports, because training is our sport, I think that helps then the sport platform grow. Honestly, if we could say that we'd be more like golf, I'd be like, that's a pretty good north to be, golf and tennis are pretty good sports to kind of like point towards. I mean, they're insanely massive global sports. So just, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, nobody needs to worry about that. Like, we'll see what it looks like, 50 years from now, where we're at and what do we exist and how does it look. But, I think there's a lot of change in a good way. I think, some settling will be really good for us as a market and as a sport. But, I think, one thing I want people to realize too on the sports, like when people are saying things like, oh man, everything changes so constantly with this thing. Well, that's the way like hockey was 100 years ago. And that's the way NFL was, 50, 60 years ago. It's just like tinkering people trying to find the right way and the right way to approach this. And now look, there's a Super Bowl that's 50, whatever, 60, years old. That's the largest sporting event viewed in the world every year, right? Like that didn't look like that back then. So, at least, we're very popular. People engage it. They're accepting the change and we're still growing. And we got people that, are trying to help it evolve to look more like those things. But I think if we could look like a golf tour or a tennis tour more over time, which, I know is, things that, their, CrossFit leadership, I'm sure would pinch themselves if they looked more like, and I know they're working really hard to do that. I think we would have won, honestly. That would be like a really good destination. So, but the battle's on. Like we're still working really hard for that. I want to I think that's like a really good way to wrap a bow on it too, is like all this crap that's gone on, like particularly the last few years, is like, there's seemingly people fighting for real estate at times, and like there's egos involved. And I think, less now today than maybe in the past. And now like this sort of north and beacon is the sport and the athletes and the story, which is great. Right. And I think now that's a really cool evolution, but I will say, like, no matter what, like, and I don't agree with some things that have happened, and maybe some don't with some things, way we've processed things at times as an athlete core, but everybody wants the same thing, which is success and growth. And, I think more uniquely in this space, particularly over the last couple of years than I think others, a lot of people have taken a lot of, things on the chin for the greater good, and I think that that's really, that's really cool, and something that we're very fortunate, like, athletes that had a lot to lose in moments were willing to put those things on the line for the betterment of the long term of this sport. We got a really unique, cool crowd, and I think that's why we're continuing to evolve and grow. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like in the next 10 years. The last 10 have been exciting and massive growth. And like even today with some stuff that's been a little crazy, we're still growing. So the business side's wild, and there are more people want to tell stories around it. So I'm here to watch it and help with it. And I'm excited to see where it ends up.
I'm right there with you, brother. I really appreciate your time, your energy, your presence, and your storytelling today, and most importantly, your vulnerability. I know that's not always easy. What can people expect from Mat O'Keefe in the remainder of 2022 as we've got quarterfinals coming up in a week or so?
I'll be grinding. We moved platforms, so we're on our own app officially now. We're just trying to get the messaging out to people, where we're at, which is, challenging yet fun. I love challenges. So, but we're working hard on that and then improving. We've got, we're going to, be a business that constantly evolves. And, we really moved to our own platform and, partnered with these guys from Fitter, to do that because people wanted a new look, and they wanted our own platform, something of their own, and they wanted things to look differently. So, I'll be really working really hard on what the evolution of HWPO looks like. And we've got a ton going on. Like we're programming competitions around the world, and we got a tour in Europe coming up in the fall in September. So, no rest for the weary. I think, I will be home planning a lot more of these things rather than on the road in Florida. But I'm recharged and ready to rock. I'm, spent the last few days through this launch with our new team, some people that, had worked on this but are now full time. And man, I'm so charged up. I guess I like the beginning and the middle and the, and just like growing things. But this is, man, I'm like in the perfect place for me. And I am working with people I adore and love, and, and we're grinding together, and I'm having so much fun. So I'm back and going to be working my ass off just like I always have been, and I'll be around.
I love it, man. I can feel and see the passion all over your face. Well, congratulations on the launch, and please say hello to the team for me. If anybody wants to hop on and have a solid conversation, I'm always down to connect with your crew. Thank you so much, my man. For those of you listening, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who've not yet become. Are you over 35 and in need of a solid training program? Are you looking to improve your athleticism and keep up with the younger athletes in your CrossFit gym? Then look no further than our Invictus Masters program. This program places year-round emphasis on mobility and stability exercises with movements that we have seen directly benefit our Masters athletes. Our program is led by Nicole DeHart and offers a training program designed specifically for Masters athletes who are looking to compete at a higher level in the sport of CrossFit. Some of our top Masters athletes in the world train with us, including CrossFit Games champion Kevin Kester, Matt Beals, and Pat Sprague. You can learn more about their stories and the Invictus Masters program by checking out their episodes right here on the Invictus Mindset Podcast. If you'd like more information about the current training cycle or to join the Invictus Masters program, please email Nicole at invictusathlete.com. That's NICHOLE at invictusathlete.com.